My heart pounded against the silk of my wedding gown as I stood at the threshold of the grand oak doors. Sunlight poured through the stained glass windows of St. Mark's Church, scattering rainbow shards across the marble floor. I drew in a slow breath, forcing calm into my lungs. Today was supposed to be the beginning of everything I had dreamed of. My marriage to James Whittaker, the man I had loved since our college days in Cambridge. Yet, as I stepped forward, I felt the brittle tension in my chest crack, like fine porcelain. I had always known my parents to be fair and supportive, if a bit old-fashioned. My father, Gerald Ashbourne, had been a respected barrister in London. My mother, Eleanor, ran a small art gallery on the South Bank. They had taught me to value family above all else. But when James and I announced our engagement a year ago, I saw a flicker of uncertainty in their eyes, far less about the man I loved than about something else I could not name. Months passed, and wedding plans unfolded. Invitations printed in gold leaf, florist notes pinned to corkboards, tasting sessions at the Savoy. My mother and I pored over every detail, from the lace pattern on my veil to the place cards at the reception. My father handled legal formalities and ensured the seating arrangement would please our extended kin. Yet in every email confirmation, every site visit, I sensed an undercurrent of distraction. Until last week, when my mother called to say they wouldn't be attending after all. The message had been impossibly brief. "I'm so sorry, darling," she said, voice trembling. "But we've made a commitment we cannot break. Please forgive us. Love, Mum." I stared at my phone in disbelief. Gerald had left an apologetic voicemail, promising to explain soon. But my mind formed its own terrifying scenarios. A family emergency, a sudden illness, some dreadful accident. I dialed back immediately, but neither of them answered. A handwritten note arrived 2 days later, scrawled across cream stationery with my mother's unmistakable script. "Forgive us, Cora, we love you. But some promises cannot be undone." My sister, Violet, 10 years my junior, silver-haired and whimsical, greeted me in our childhood home. She was perched by the hearth, cradling her beloved rescue cat, Mr. Whiskers, in her arms. "There's been a misunderstanding," she said. "They're with me. I convinced them it was more important to keep their promise." My blood ran cold. "Promise to what?" I whispered, taking tentative steps toward her. She stroked the cat's velvety ears. "You know how Mum vowed to look after Mr. Whiskers when I finished university. The shelter called last week. He was in distress, wouldn't eat. They asked if she could come immediately. He needed her. She couldn't say no." I closed my eyes, fighting the absurdity of it. My parents had, literally, chosen a cat over their daughter's wedding day. This wasn't an accident, it was a statement. Somewhere between the vows and the vows of ownership, my place in their priorities had slipped. I remembered the countless nights I stayed up comforting Violet after nightmares, the time I paid her tuition when her scholarship fell through, the summer I rewired the gallery's website so it would attract new buyers. And all of it had ended in this hollow betrayal. I turned and surveyed the foyer. Bridal bouquets lay half arranged on a side table. A bouquet of peonies waiting to be tied with satin ribbon. My wedding shoes stood lonely on the rug, the straps still undone. The air smelled of lilies, my mother's favorite flower, and of smoke, as though someone had tried to set fire to my future. I lifted the bouquet, the petals trembling in my hand. Each one felt like a slash, a reminder that even love could be neglected. When I found James waiting at the altar, his suit impeccable and his eyes warm with anticipation, I realized I had a choice. Would I collapse under the weight of this betrayal, letting it define me? Or would I rise, transform my anger into resolve, and make them regret underestimating the fierce loyalty that runs in our family blood? I smoothed the front of my dress, drawing the edges of the lace back into place. The organ began to play the opening notes of the bridal march. Guests rose, shifting expectantly in their seats. I felt James's grasp on my hand tighten. The doors swung open and my gaze met his. Not with sorrow, but with unbreakable determination. I stepped forward into the aisle. Every eye in the church followed me. In that moment, I owned the betrayal and wielded it like a blade. because nothing would stop me from seizing this day in my own hands. And so I married James Whittaker beneath the arches of St. Mark's Church, the sun casting fractured colors across the aisle like a shattered promise. But as I slipped a ring onto his finger, a single vow burned in my soul. I would make my parents wish they had never chosen a cat over their daughter's wedding. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're from. If this story moves you, please subscribe. Tomorrow, I have a special story for you. The candlelight flickered along the white petals that lined the aisle, but in my mind, everything was blurred by adrenaline. I had said my vows, but the real battle had just begun. James kissed me gently on the cheek before we turned to face the congregation, and for a brief second, warmth spread through my chest. It was the reassuring weight of his hand on my back as we walked down the aisle together, the first of many steps we would take side by side. Outside, a silver Bentley was waiting, its engine thrumming softly. My dress brushed against the pavement as James helped me into the back seat. I slipped on my sunglasses, hiding the swirl of emotion behind dark lenses. "Ready?" he asked, voice low. I took a steadying breath. "Ready." The car glided away from St. Mark's toward the reception venue, an 18th-century manor nestled in the rolling hills of Surrey. Ivy climbed the stone walls, and lanterns dangled from the oaks in the courtyard. James had arranged for a string quartet to play Vivaldi, while guests mingled over champagne and canapés. Everything was perfect on paper. But perfection had a brittle shell, and mine was already cracked. Inside the manor's grand hall, long tables draped in ivory linen were set with crystal goblets and silver cutlery. At the far end, a raised dais held the wedding cake, 5 tiers of ivory buttercream, adorned with fresh garden roses. I slipped off my shoes by the door, padding across the oak floor in my stockings. "Cora, over here," a familiar voice called. My childhood friend, Margaret Langley, rushed to embrace me. Her auburn hair was pinned with a jeweled comb, and her emerald silk dress shimmered under the chandelier. "Mags, you look stunning," I said, returning her hug. "You look like you swallowed a sunrise," she laughed, wiping a tear from her cheek. "I've been waiting for this day forever, but where are your parents?" My smile faltered. "They had to tend to an urgent family matter," I willed calm into my voice. Margaret studied me, then shrugged and nodded. She moved on to greet the Duchess of Waverley and a cluster of university colleagues. I drifted toward James, who was greeting his aunt and uncle. Midway through a toast by James's brother Edward, I spotted a familiar silhouette in the corner of the room, my sister, Violet, clutching Mr. Whiskers in her arms. The cat was nestled inside a lavender cashmere blanket that matched her scarf. She soothed its purring body, while a small group of guests whispered nearby. I felt a current of rage pulse through me. I had pictured my parents at this moment, standing behind me as I cut the cake, pride shining in their eyes. Instead, my sister and her cat occupied that place, not me. A sudden hush fell over the room as Edward raised his glass. "To Cora and James," he began, "may your life together be filled with laughter, loyalty, and more joy than you ever dreamed possible. To the bride and groom." Glasses clinked. I lifted mine, but my hand shook. "Thank you," I said into the hush, voice steady but cold. "Thank you all for coming, especially those who couldn't make it." My eyes scanned the crowd, daring my parents to be anywhere there. They were absent, and I would not pretend otherwise. Instead, I would shine so brightly that their absence would stand out like a missing star in the night sky. After the toasts, guests mingled in small clusters. I stepped outside onto a marble terrace to catch a breath of crisp evening air. The English countryside stretched before me, golden fields fading into dark woodlands under a bruised purple sky. James joined me, wrapping his arm around my waist. "Are you okay?" I leaned into him. "I will be. I'm just feeling everything at once." He kissed the top of my head. "Let me get you some water." I nodded as he returned inside. Alone, I closed my eyes and let the breeze soothe my turmoil. The wedding day had been surreal, filled with beauty and betrayal in equal measure. A soft meow shattered the stillness. I turned as Violet appeared, stepping off the terrace with Mr. Whiskers nestled against her chest. "Can we talk?" she asked quietly. I hesitated, then nodded. She led me down a gravel path toward a secluded garden gazebo. Lanterns lit the stone walkway, and wisteria draped over the wooden beams like silent witnesses. Inside the gazebo, Violet settled onto a carved teak bench, placing the cat at her feet. "Tell me, Violet," I said, keeping my voice low. "What promise was so important that Mum and Dad chose it over my wedding?" She looked away, gathering words like stones. "You know how she always said she'd be there for anything in our family. When Mr. Whiskers fell ill, the shelter called and said he might not make it through the night. They begged Mum to come. She couldn't just let him die on his own." Quote, I felt a spike of bitter laughter rise in my chest. "And what about me?" She frowned. "I didn't ask them to choose. It just happened. I feel terrible, Cora. I tried to explain how much this day meant to you, but they said they'd built everything around that promise to me." I stood, pacing the gazebo's edge. They couldn't have known what promise meant more, a daughter's moment of a lifetime versus a cat's scraping breath. Violet's eyes glistened. "Mum said it broke her heart. She's crying with regret." I swallowed the lump in my throat. Regret alone would not undo this betrayal. A sudden rustle in the underbrush made my heart lurch. I peered through the lattice, half expecting an intruder. But it was only a hedgehog scuttling across the grass under the moonlight. I exhaled, then turned back to Violet. "It's not enough." My voice was steady but ice-coated every word. "They need to understand the gravity of what they did." She swallowed. "What are you going to do?" I crossed my arms, determination hardening within me. "I will show them that family loyalty isn't a whim to be shelved when it suits them. I will make them understand that I deserve their support as much as, no, more than, any promise they made to a cat. And they will regret this day, Ivy." Violet's jaw dropped slightly. "You can't." I leaned in, voice a whisper. "Watch me." Behind me, the hedgehog froze, its tiny eyes reflecting the lantern glow. It stood motionless, as if in awe of the vow I had just spoken. And in that silent night, I vowed to rewrite my parents' priorities in bold, unbreakable ink. I heard footsteps on the gravel outside the gazebo. I whirled, heart pounding. The door opened, revealing a stranger in the shadows, and my breath caught in my throat. The stranger stepped into the lantern light, revealing a sharp suit and an expression neither warm nor hostile, just discerning. My pulse hammered against my ribs as I searched his face. "Cora Ashbourne?" the man asked, voice smooth like polished stone. I hesitated, then nodded. "Yes. Who are you?" He offered a subtle smile that didn't reach his eyes. "My name is Lucas Sinclair. I've come on behalf of your parents." Every muscle in me tensed. "They sent you? After what they did today?" Sinclair's gaze flicked to Violet and Mr. Whiskers. "They're distraught. They asked me to offer a sincere apology and an opportunity." I crossed my arms, refusing to let anger slip into panic. "Go on." Quote. He reached into his jacket and withdrew a slim envelope, sealed with my family crest embossed in gold. "They wish to make amends." My fingers itched to tear it open, but I stayed still. And what might that look like? He slid the envelope across the bench. "Read it. Then, if you accept, you'll know what to do." I picked up the envelope, thumbing at the wax seal before breaking it. Inside, a single card lay flat, bearing a simple message in my mother's handwriting. "My dearest Cora, I cannot undo the hurt I've caused, but I can try to restore what was broken. You mean more to me than anything, more than any promise. Meet me at Ashbourne Hall tomorrow at noon, where whatever makes you feel powerful, I will be waiting. Love always. Mum." The card fluttered in my hand like a wounded bird. I swallowed around the lump in my throat and looked back at Sinclair. "Is that all?" I asked. His shoulders relaxed ever so slightly. "That is their request. I will be at Ashbourne Hall as well, to ensure everything goes smoothly." He fell silent. My mind raced. Was this a trap? A ploy? My parents had lost all credibility. Yet a sliver of hope flickered within me, a chance to confront them face to face. "Very well," I said, voice steady. I'll be there. Sinclair nodded, pocketed the card, and turned to leave. I'll see you tomorrow. I watched him step out of the gazebo, the gravel crunching beneath his polished shoes. When the door closed behind him, I exhaled, releasing the tension that had coiled in my shoulders. Violet approached, her eyes wide. Mr. Whiskers nestled at her feet, purring softly. What did he say? She whispered. I folded the card and placed it in my clutch. They want a second chance. At noon tomorrow, Ashbourne Hall. Her relief was immediate. Oh, Cora. I held up a hand. Don't get too hopeful, Ivy. This is just the beginning. Tomorrow, I intend to make them see the value of their daughter. She nodded, eyes shining with tears and pride. We left the gazebo, stepping back into the glow of the reception lights. The musicians' strains drifted through the air, and the scent of roses followed us down the path. The world felt both lighter and heavier, lighter with the promise of confrontation, heavier with what it would require. As I rejoined James, he took my hand and squeezed. You okay? I forced a smile. Better than ever. I know what I have to do. Tomorrow will be the true test. He nodded, kissing my knuckles. Whatever you need, I'm with you. I leaned into him, letting his strength bolster mine. Tomorrow, Ashbourne Hall would witness a reckoning. And I would emerge victorious, or die trying. Dawn broke over the rolling Surrey estate in a wash of pale gold, revealing dew-frosted rosebushes and the ornate facade of Ashbourne Hall. I stood at the edge of the gravel courtyard, the crisp morning air nestling against my skin as I smoothed the tailored lines of my navy blue power suit. No lace, no silk, just confidence woven into every stitch. The heavy oak doors swung open before I could knock. My mother appeared in the threshold, her auburn hair tamed into a perfect chignon, but her eyes were red-rimmed and haunted. My father hovered just behind her, shoulders stooped beneath the weight of unspoken regret. Cora, my mother began, voice trembling, thank you for coming. I stepped forward, heels clicking against the stones. You invited me. She nodded. We need to talk. My father joined us. We're sorry. We were wrong. His voice cracked on the last word. I withheld the retort that rose on my tongue. Something about pledges to a cat versus promises to a daughter. But instead, I folded my arms and held his gaze. Words mean little without action. My mother's lip quivered. She glanced at the courtyard, then gestured for me to follow them inside. I ascended the stone steps, each one echoing my resolve. Inside, the grand foyer was a study in ancestral opulence. Tapestries of Ashbourne lineage, marble floors laid in intricate patterns. My mother paused before a portrait of my grandmother, a stern woman with icy eyes. She drew in a breath. Your grandmother would have understood family comes first. I met her stare. Then why did you choose a cat over me? My father swallowed. We panicked. We feared losing Violet's only companion, and we forgot that our first job was to stand by our daughter. Anger flared like wildfire across my chest. Forgot? You think this was a minor lapse? You turned your backs on my life's greatest moment. You made a spectacle of my betrayal. My mother's shoulders sagged. We see that now, and we want to make it right. I exhaled slowly. Then prove it. She led us into the drawing room. Soft creams and pale blues, a gilded mirror above the mantelpiece reflecting our tense gathering. A small table bore an antique box, its lid inlaid with mother of pearl. Open it, she urged. I approached, lifting the lid to reveal a stack of leather-bound journals, each cover embossed with my name in elegant script. My breath caught as I recognized the first one, the journal I had kept throughout university, full of sketches, dreams, and private reflections. We found these in the attic, my father said. We read them. We saw how hard you've worked, how deeply you feel. Tears pricked my eyes. You invaded my privacy. My mother steadied my hand. We needed to understand why this day mattered so much to you, more than any other. I opened the journal to a random page and saw my handwriting, the margins filled with sketches of our future home, notes about James's smile, plans for our life together. I wanted you there. I whispered. She nodded. We know, and we're sorry. We want to be the parents you deserve. I closed the journal and stood, turning to face them. If you truly value family, then act like it. Support James and me as we build our life. Be present for every milestone, every joy, every sorrow. My father stepped forward, clasping my hand. We will. You have our word. I felt something shift, a fragile hope, like the first tendrils of spring breaking through winter's frost. But promises, I reminded myself, remain words until proven by deeds. I placed the journal back in the box. Then let the proof begin. Outside, the morning sun glinted off the courtyard stones. I lifted my chin. Today, the reckoning had begun. But the true test of loyalty lay in the days to come. The days that followed our meeting at Ashbourne Hall became a crucible of truths and tensions. James and I returned to our new flat overlooking the Thames, determined to forge our path unburdened by the past. Yet every sunrise brought a reminder of the fracture left in my heart. I awoke early one morning to find a package at our doorstep. Inside lay a photo album, its leather cover worn at the corners. On the first page was a photograph of me as a child, perched on my father's shoulders at a summer fair. My mother's handwriting arching above read, "To my brave girl, no more absences." As I turned the pages, images of birthdays, graduations, quiet evenings at home, I felt the pull of nostalgia and the sting of what had been lost. But rather than retreat into memory, I allowed the album to steal my resolve. This was my life, my story, and I would write its next chapters in bold. I called my parents, inviting them to dinner at our flat. They hesitated, citing busy schedules, but agreed at last. That evening, I set the table with care. White china, silverware inherited from grandmother, candlesticks casting a warm glow. When they arrived, their faces were cautious, hopeful. "Thank you for coming," I began, gesturing to the table. "Tonight, I want us to start fresh." The conversation was tentative at first. Polite inquiries about work, James's latest project at the firm, Violet's studies. But as the lamb roast was cleared and the last sip of wine finished, I reached for the photo album. "I want to show you something," I said, opening to the first page. "These are moments I thought you'd always be part of. But one day, I realized I had to demand my place." My mother's lip quivered as she flipped through the images. My father placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. I closed the album and lifted my gaze. "Family isn't about perfect days. It's about presence. I need you to be present. Not for a promise to a cat, but for your daughter." Silence settled over the room like a heavy fog. "Cora," my mother whispered, tears filling her eyes. "We're sorry. We will be there. For everything." But I held up a hand, forcing myself to pause before accepting their words. Show me. Actions, not words. 2 weeks later, James and I planned a small gathering at St. Mark's Church, an anniversary service to renew our vows, inviting only our closest family and friends. When the day arrived, I stood beneath the stained glass windows once more, heart thrumming with anticipation. I glanced at the pew behind me and saw my parents, hand in hand, tears in their eyes. At that moment, something inside me shifted. Old wounds began to mend. The service was intimate. Jeremy, our close friend, officiated, and the string quartet played softly as we exchanged rings again. When I looked at my parents, they offered reassuring smiles, proof of their commitment. Later, in our flat's living room, surrounded by laughter and music, my mother pulled me aside. "I've arranged something for Violet. She will stay with us this weekend, and Mr. Whiskers will be at home." Her cheeks were flushed with shame and relief. I hugged her. "Thank you. This means everything." She kissed my forehead. "You're everything." My father joined us, and together we watched as Violet carried Mr. Whiskers into the room, the cat's green eyes reflecting the candlelight. I turned to my parents. "You made the right choice today, and I promise I will always choose you as my family." They nodded, their embrace warm and unbroken. This story took us a long time. If you like it, subscribe! Now, back to the story. But as the evening wound down, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Enjoying your reunion?" There's more you don't know. My breath caught. I looked up at my family, laughing around the table, unaware of the secret that threatened to shatter our fragile peace. And I realized that making them regret choosing a cat over my wedding was only the first step. The real challenge was protecting what we'd fought so hard to reclaim. The message flashed on my phone's screen, breaking through the warmth of the evening. Enjoying your reunion? There's more you don't know. My pulse spiked, a cold current rushing down my spine. I glanced across the room. My parents and Violet were gathered around the dining table, laughing softly as they finished the last of the dessert. James was out on the balcony, talking quietly with Edward about tomorrow's charity gala. I slipped away toward the hallway, heart pounding. The old oak floorboards creaked beneath my feet as I moved toward our study. Inside, I closed the door behind me and leaned against it, sliding down until I sat on the plush Persian rug. The screen glowed. A second message arrived, meet me in the rose garden at midnight, alone. I swallowed, mind racing. Was this a prank? A misguided attempt by someone who opposed my victory over my parents? But something deeper, darker, felt at play. My fingers hovered over the keypad. I typed, "Who is this?" Seconds passed, then a reply. "All will be revealed tonight. Come alone or lose everything." My breath caught. Lose everything. Could they mean my marriage? My new bond with my parents? My very legacy? I thought of Ashbourne Hall and those leather-bound journals, the trust I had begun to rebuild. Someone was threatening to unravel it all. I tapped out a reply. "I'll be there." Then I deleted the message. No trace, no way for someone to track me back. Midnight draped itself over the estate like a velvet cloak. I donned a black trench coat over my power suit and slipped out the back door. The rose garden lay bathed in moonlight. Pale petals drifted in the gentle breeze. The scent of thorns mingled with the sweet fragrance of the blooms. A solitary figure stood beneath the trellis arch, footsteps crunching softly on the gravel. I approached, breath shallow. As I neared, the silhouette resolved into a lean man, late 30s, dark hair, impeccable posture. He turned, and my breath hitched in my throat. His face was familiar, but I couldn't place him. He offered a polite bow. "Ms. Ashbourne," he said, voice smooth, "thank you for coming." "Who are you?" I demanded, stepping closer. He hesitated, then removed his gloves, revealing slender fingers. He held out a file, black leather, stamped with an Ashbourne crest identical to my parents'. I took it, opening the clasp. Inside were documents, a will, signed decades ago by my grandfather. The estate's entirety, every property, every penny, was to be passed to the firstborn child of Ashbourne lineage. But an addendum below bore another signature, Violet Ashbourne, dated 2 weeks ago. My head spun. This is recent. But why would Violet? He shook his head. Your parents refiled the addendum after you married. They think Violet's innocence protects the heir from marital claims. Anger flared. They can't do that. He stepped back, raising a hand. They did. The board approved it this morning. If you don't contest this by dawn, the estate legally transfers to your sister. James's name won't matter. Your marital rights won't override this trust. You'll lose your share of the Ashbourne legacy. My breath caught. I looked down at the file, heart thundering. The betrayal ran deeper than a cat's priority. My own blood was plotting to disinherit me. I slammed the file shut. Why are you telling me this? I demanded. He offered a sad smile. Because I once worked for your family. I believed in their honor. Until today. I can help you reverse this, but you must trust me. I clenched my jaw. The moonlit garden felt suddenly colder. Violet's name burned on the page, but I knew she was innocent, a pawn in my parents' scheme, and I had to act before dawn. I extended my hand. All right, help me. But if this is a trap... It's not, he promised, gripping my hand. But time is short. We'll need evidence, legal filings, and... A distant clock chimed midnight, 6 sharp notes that echoed through the silent garden. I swallowed. The fight for my legacy and my family had only begun. Under the dim glow of the moonlit arbor, I stood with Lucas Sinclair, clutching the leather file that threatened to unravel everything. My pulse rattled like a drum. The chill air whispered through the roses, their petals pale specters in the night. First, we need to secure a copy of the original will and all subsequent amendments, Lucas said, voice hushed as if even the wind might betray us. He produced a sleek smartphone and tapped the screen. I have a contact at the National Archives. He can pull the records electronically, but it will take time, at least an hour. I nodded, jaw clenched. Then we'll stall. Lucas's dark eyes gleamed in the moonlight. Exactly! Meanwhile, I've arranged for a paralegal, my associate, to prepare emergency filings. But they need your signature, and the board's lead counsel must be informed at dawn. My heart thudded. Dawn. We had mere hours. I drew in a steady breath. Where do we start? He guided me down the garden path, past hedges sculpted into austere shapes. The distant clock tower chimed once more, a grim reminder of time slipping away. Tonight we gather evidence. 1. Prove the addendum was unauthorized. 2. Undermine the board's approval. 3. Invalidate any attempt to transfer assets without your consent. He paused at the garden gate. But first, I need you to trust me. I swallowed. The betrayal stung. My parents, my sister, my family legacy. Yet here stood a stranger offering me an alliance. I trust you, I said firmly. Show me what to do. We parted ways. Lucas back toward the estate service wing to tap his network, and me toward the stables, where old family records were stored. I slipped past the caretaker's cottage, the windows dark, and entered the barn's shadowy interior. Rows of wooden crates lay stacked near the far wall. I located the one marked Ashbourne Archive, pre-2000, and lifted the lid. Inside, dusty ledgers and brittle folders waited. My fingers trembled as I sorted through them, searching for the will signed at Lord Ashbourne's death. My breath caught when I found it. The yellowed pages, ink slightly faded, but the signature clear. I extracted the documents and replaced them with empty folders, a subtle move to buy myself a few minutes if someone noticed. Cradling the folder to my chest, I slipped back into the gardens. Lucas stood beneath a marble statue of Lady Eleanor Ashbourne, the first matriarch. He held his phone out to me. Did you get it? I handed him the folder. He tapped the camera app and scanned the pages, ensuring each section was captured. As I watched, a group of hounds in the kennels began to stir, barking softly. Quiet, I hissed, placing a finger to my lips. Even the dogs seemed drawn to the tension in the air. Lucas pocketed the phone. Good. Now, we need witnesses to authenticate this copy. I know 3 people, the head archivist, your godfather, Kenwood, and the family solicitor, Ms. Alvarez. I nodded. I can call Alvarez. She's still at her office late hours when necessary. He looked at me with grave admiration. You're remarkable, Cora. But be careful. Your parents might suspect someone inside the family has turned against them. A shiver ran down my spine. Betrayal from within had already nearly cost me everything. I pressed on. Then let's move. By dawn, we'll present a case so airtight they can't ignore it. And my claim will stand unbroken. Lucas smiled, a fleeting warmth in the cold night. Exactly. We slipped away, blending into the shadows, our mission clear, to outmaneuver my parents' machinations and reclaim my birthright. Every beat of my heart rang with urgency. Every rustle of leaves whispered conspiracy. As the rose petals drifted to the ground like silent witnesses, I realized that this battle for legacy was far more treacherous than any I had faced before, and the next challenge would come with the sunrise. The first light of dawn seeped through the tall windows of my study as I pored over the legal drafts spread across my desk. The ticking of the antique clock was relentless, each second echoing the urgency that clutched my heart. The will, its faded parchment and Lord Ashbourne's elegant signature, lay beside the newly drafted emergency injunction, its pages crisp and promising. Outside, the Surrey estate stirred, unaware of the storm gathering within its walls. I traced the lines of the injunction, ensuring that every clause would protect my claims: a frozen trust, an immediate stay on any asset transfer, and a demand for an emergency board meeting at first light. Lucas's paralegal had done meticulous work, and yet I felt the weight of every comma. If even a single detail faltered, my sister's name would hold the estate's destiny in her hands. A soft knock at the door startled me. I looked up to see Ms. Alvarez stepping in, her tailored suit betraying the long hours she kept. Her dark eyes were sharp, but sympathetic. She laid a thick folder on my desk. "These are the affidavits from the National Archives, the authenticated copies of the original will and all amendments prior to this week," she said. "They arrived this morning. I have witnesses lined up, but we must file before the board convenes." I nodded, relief and resolve mingling in my chest. "Thank you, Ms. Alvarez. Let's finalize these filings." She began reviewing the paperwork, her silver pen darting across signatures. Sweat beaded at my brow despite the cool morning air. Every moment counted. I glanced at the clock. 6:15 a.m. I excused myself, heading to the grand hall where the board meeting would take place. My parents and Violet would arrive soon, accompanied by the solicitor and family counsel. I needed one final strategy: the element of surprise. Down the corridor, I found Lucas awaiting me by the oak-paneled doors. His expression was steely determination. He nodded as I approached. "Everything is in motion," he said. "The paralegal is ready to file electronically. Once the board acknowledges receipt, they cannot proceed with the addendum." I exhaled, steeling myself. "Let's move." We entered the grand hall, where a long mahogany table was surrounded by Ashbourne's elite, distant cousins, financial advisors, and the aging patriarch of the family's trust. My mother and father stood at the head, their faces drawn. My mother stepped forward as I entered. "Cora, you made it!" Her voice trembled. I offered a curt nod and took my place beside Lucas. The board chair, Sir Edmund Carriage, rose. "We are gathered at short notice to consider the new trust addendum," he began. "But it seems there is new evidence requiring our attention." With Lucas's signal, Ms. Alvarez entered, holding a stack of documents. She approached the chair and laid the authenticated will on the table. Gasps rippled through the room. Sir Edmund's glasses perched on the tip of his nose as he examined the documents. "What is the meaning of this?" he asked. Ms. Alvarez's voice was unwavering. "This original will designates the firstborn child of Lord Ashbourne as heir. No subsequent amendments are valid without the testator's consent. This addendum, signed 2 weeks ago, was never authorized by Lord Ashbourne and is thus legally void." My siblings and cousins exchanged glances. Violet's eyes filled with confusion. Sir Edmund adjusted his glasses. "We will need to verify these claims, but pending confirmation, I hereby request a stay on all trust matters." A murmur of agreement filled the room. I felt a surge of triumph, tempered by sorrow. My parents looked at me, tears in their eyes. This time, not of regret, but of pride. My father whispered, "You did it, Cora." I met his gaze. We did it. But as I allowed myself the first taste of victory, a flicker of doubt crossed the room. Sir Edmund's gaze lingered on Ms. Alvarez, a silent question in his eyes. And I knew this ordeal was far from over. More challenges awaited beyond these oak-paneled walls. The board adjourned, but before we could disperse, Lucas pulled me aside. "There's one more detail," he said in a hush. "A clause buried deep in the estate's bylaws, something your parents hoped you'd never find." My pulse quickened. "What clause?" He produced a weathered leather dossier. "We'll discuss this in my office." As I followed him out of the grand hall, I realized that every victory in this fight only unearthed deeper secrets, and that the true battle for my inheritance, my family, and my own sense of self had only just begun. We slipped into Lucas's office, a small chamber just off the library lined with shelves of legal tomes and case files. Golden morning light filtered through the tall sash windows, illuminating motes of dust drifting in the air. On his desk lay the leather dossier he'd produced, a tattered folder bound by a faded ribbon. He closed the door behind us and leaned against it, his expression serious. "This clause," he began, pulling out a sheet of parchment, "is an obscure bylaw from the 1870 codicil of the family trust." I took the parchment and scanned the dense, archaic script. My breath caught. Buried in the legalese was a requirement that any heir must also live on the family estate for at least 1 year before assuming control of the assets. If that requirement weren't met, the inheritance would bypass that heir entirely and be distributed to the next living relative. My fingers trembled. But I've been living in London for years. Lucas nodded. Exactly. Your marriage and move into your new flat mean that technically you're not resident on the estate, at least according to this codicil. It was likely inserted to protect Lord Ashbourne's widow at the time, ensuring heirs remained close to the estate. Today, it puts us in jeopardy. I looked down at the clause. The words, 1 year contiguous residence, glared up at me like a blinding spotlight. So even though we've stopped the addendum, they could invoke this clause to disinherit me? He pulled a file from his briefcase. Your parents were going to use this as a fallback. They planned to challenge your residency status as soon as the immediate crisis was resolved. My chest tightened. They're relentless. He sighed. But there's a way to counter it. You need to establish residency, legally and undeniably, or secure an amendment to the codicil. That requires consent of 2/3 of the board. We can leverage their guilt. We can show how wrong their actions have been, and petition them at the next meeting. I clenched my jaw. Then we'll do just that. But first, I paused, realizing a critical need. We need to gather evidence of my contributions and ties to the estate. Proof that I am as invested here as any rightful heir. Lucas's eyes glinted. I thought you'd say that. I've arranged for interviews with estate staff, financial ledgers showing your donations to the family foundation, even social records of your charitable events held in the estate's name. I gave a determined nod. Prepare everything. We'll present an airtight petition. He smiled. I knew I chose the right ally. I allowed myself a flicker of gratitude, then hardened my gaze. But there's one more thing. I want to know exactly who else on that board is aligned with my parents. We need to address them individually. Appeal to anyone who still believes in family unity. Lucas tapped his pen thoughtfully. I have their names and voting histories. We can approach each tactically. I paused, staring out the window at the manicured gardens below, roses, hedges trimmed into ornate shapes, a koi pond glimmering in the sunlight. The estate looked serene, but beneath its beauty lay treacherous politics. My parents had chosen a cat over my wedding, but now they were threatening to strip me of everything I held dear. I closed my eyes, taking a breath. This isn't just about inheritance. It's about rightful place, respect, and the legacy of my family name. I won't let them rewrite my future. Lucas placed a supportive hand on my shoulder. Then let's get to work. We have a board meeting in 2 days. We'll need to move fast. A distant peal of church bells drifted through the open window. Reminders of vows taken, promises made, and betrayals still to be avenged. The battle for my legacy was far from over, and the next moves would determine whether I was truly the heir of Ashbourne. As we gathered the files and prepared to launch our petition, a soft knock came at the office door. We both froze. Lucas whispered, "Who?" Quote. Before he could finish, the door creaked open, revealing... Lucas and I froze as the office door swung open, revealing my godfather, Lord Kenwood Ashbourne. His silver hair gleamed in the morning light. He stared at us, a mixture of concern and suspicion in his steel-gray eyes. Cora, he said quietly, closing the door behind him, your mother asked me to check on you. She fears you may be taking on too much. My heart pounded. Kenwood had always been a steadfast mentor. Until now, I held my ground. I'm fine, sir. We're on the brink of securing the estate's future. He frowned, glancing at the dossier and affidavits strewn across Lucas's desk. Is this about the addendum? Lucas stepped forward. Yes, Lord Kenwood. We have evidence that the addendum is invalid, and we've filed an emergency injunction. Additionally, we've discovered an old bylaw that could pose another threat without proper amendment. We're preparing a petition to address both issues at the next board meeting. Kenwood's expression darkened. Your parents did not intend to harm you, Cora. They were misguided, perhaps. But going to the board in this manner, without their knowledge, could fracture the family beyond repair. I felt a surge of frustration. They fractured it when they chose a cat over my wedding. Now I'm only demanding what's rightfully mine, with the support of law and precedent. Kenwood sighed, stepping closer. I admire your courage, but I implore you, consider the cost. If this becomes a public matter, the family name will be stained. I straightened. My reputation as an heir matters more than appearances. I will not compromise my birthright for the sake of a facade. Kenwood's jaw clenched. He looked at Lucas, then back at me. I will not hinder your efforts, but I will stand as a neutral party at the meeting. Lucas inclined his head. Thank you, sir. Kenwood turned to me. Be careful, Cora. Even allies can become adversaries when stakes are high. With that, he left, the office door clicking softly behind him. Lucas exhaled. Your godfather is wavering. We'll need to secure a definite vote from him. I paced the room, mind racing. If Kenwood held the swing vote, we had to ensure his support unwavering. And yet, I couldn't shake the feeling that more secrets lay hidden in the estate's history. Secrets that my parents had kept from everyone, even me. A knock sounded at the outer door. Someone else approaching. Lucas glanced at me, eyes narrowed. We need every moment. Are you ready? I squared my shoulders. Let's prepare for the board. They won't see this coming. As we gathered the files, my phone buzzed with a text from Violet. Mom is worried. Please be safe. I love you. My chest tightened. This was more than a legal battle. It was a fight for my family, for our bonds, for the legacy we shared. And as I looked at Lucas, I realized that tomorrow's board meeting would change everything, one way or another. Suddenly, the chandelier overhead shuddered, and a low rumble echoed through the hallway. The lights flickered. A tremor, earthquake, or something else seemed to ripple beneath the estate's foundation. Lucas and I exchanged alarmed glances. The room shook again, books tumbling from shelves. And as the crystal chandelier cracked, a deafening clap of thunder rolled through the stone walls, plunging the office into darkness. Darkness swallowed the room as the chandelier's crystal fragments tinkled to the floor. The tremor shook the very bones of Ashbourne Hall, and I stumbled, arms flailing in the pitch black. Lucas grabbed my elbow, steadying me as the firelight from the hallways flickered through the cracks beneath the door. Stay close, he hissed, pulling out a small flashlight from his jacket. A narrow beam cut through the gloom, landing on scattered legal files and overturned furniture. The once immaculate office now felt like a shattered world. My heart raced. What on earth? Another rumble, this time sharper and closer. Dust rained from the ceiling as the sound of splintering wood echoed above us. Lucas shone the light upward, illuminating a large, cracked spider webbing across the carved beam overhead. This estate was built on a fault line, he whispered. I've heard rumors, but never believed them. A distant scream pierced the darkness. Somewhere in the corridors, my breath caught. We need to get out of here. He nodded, swinging the beam toward the door. Just then, a low mechanical whir vibrated through the floorboards. Listen, he urged, pressing his ear to the door. Something's down the hall, not just the quake. I pressed my back against the door, feeling the cool mahogany grain. What is it? He shook his head. I don't know, but it's heading this way. Footsteps pounded on the marble beyond the door, heavy, determined. My pulse thundered. We have to block the entrance, Lucas said, yanking over the heavy oak desk to wedge under the knob. Dust billowed as we threw ourselves against it, bracing for whatever came next. The footsteps grew louder, paused, then stopped. My breath hitched. Open up, a voice called in the echoing corridor. A male voice, calm but insistent. We just want to check everyone's safe. I swallowed. Could it be Violet? Or someone else? Maybe a loyal staff member, but could I risk it? Lucas glanced at me. Shall I open, or prepare to bolt? I closed my eyes, summoning courage. Let them in. We can't hole up forever. He nodded, sliding the desk aside just enough to crack the door. A beam of lantern light sliced in, revealing the anxious face of the head butler, Simmons, his uniform dusted with plaster. Miss Ashbourne, Mr. Sinclair, are you both all right? The north wing is collapsing. We must evacuate at once. Relief and horror mingled. Thank God, I whispered. Lead the way. We followed Simmons through the winding corridors. chunks of plaster falling around us like snow. The blast of cold night air ahead drove us forward until we emerged into the moonlit courtyard, where servants and guests huddled in clusters, gazing up at the manor's facade. A deep fissure yawned at the north wall, the stones shifting ominously. Flames flickered from a toppled lantern in a nearby window, casting dancing shadows across the ivy-clad bricks. I touched the haven of my powersuit pocket. Inside, the emergency injunction and petition, the evidence of my fight. The documents I'd poured my soul into might be lost or destroyed. Lucas placed a steady hand on my arm. We'll retrieve them tomorrow, when the dust settles. For now, we must ensure everyone is safe. My gaze roamed over the gathered faces, my parents, shaken but unharmed, Violet clutching Mr. Whiskers inside a thick blanket, Sir Edmund Carriage assisting the estate staff in guiding guests away from danger. I drew a deep breath. I've won the fight for my inheritance, but this place, Ashbourne Hall, is more than bricks and wills. It's our home. We have to save it. As dawn's first light touched the horizon, I knew the real work had only begun, rescuing the estate, restoring stability, and proving that the legacy I sought to protect was worth every sacrifice. With James's heartfelt message buzzing on my phone, he'd diverted his gala to come help. I turned to face my family, ready to unite against the tremors, both literal and figurative, that threatened to break us apart. The next chapter of our story would demand more than legal acumen. It would test our courage, resilience, and the unbreakable bond of belonging. And I was determined to emerge not just as heir, but as the true heartbeat of Ashbourne Hall. Ashbourne Hall stood battered by the dawn's light, the north wing's fissure a jagged scar across its facade. The morning air carried the scent of smoke and earth, mingled with the tang of adrenaline that pulsed through every soul on the estate. I stepped onto the gravel courtyard, James by my side, and surveyed the damage. Servants and local workers had formed chains, passing buckets to quench small embers flickering near collapsed beams. Violet sat on a low wall, cradling Mr. Whiskers, whose green eyes reflected both fear and curiosity. My parents hovered nearby, faces pale but resolute. I drew in a breath. "Thank you all for responding so quickly," I called out. "We'll rebuild, stronger and wiser." A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. For a moment, the conflict over inheritance and betrayal seemed distant, overshadowed by this shared crisis. But beneath my composed exterior, my mind raced. The legal battle awaited, new clauses to amend, petitions to file. And I couldn't shake the sense that the earthquake had been more than natural. They had warned me of an inside fallback, and perhaps they'd taken measures to jeopardize the estate's stability. My father approached, his barrister's composure returning. "Cora, we need to address the building's structural safety. The restoration team must inspect the foundations." I nodded. "I'll join you, but first I need a moment with the board members." He offered a supportive nod. "Of course." I gathered Lucas and Ms. Alvarez, then led them to the library, where the board reconvened at a long table. Sir Edmund Carriage presided. "Before we proceed," I began, "we must ensure Ashbourne Hall's safety. I propose an emergency fund, matched by the family trust, to finance immediate repairs and reinforcement." Gasps of approval met my words. Kenwood Ashbourne, seated beside my mother, inclined his head. Sir Edmund cleared his throat. "A wise proposal, Ms. Ashbourne." He tapped the table. "All in favor?" Hands rose, unanimous, including my parents and cousins. I felt a surge of vindication. My family stood with me to protect our home. Yet as I sat, a nameless unease crawled along my spine. After the vote, Lucas handed me a folder. "I got word from the archives contact," he whispered. "They found an earlier codicil, dated 1897, hidden within the estate's private vault. It references unusual seismic reinforcement bonds tied to the heir's decisions." I exchanged a glance with Ms. Alvarez. "Seismic bonds?" Lucas nodded. "Yes. It appears generations of Ashbournes mandated that any heir who compromised the estate's safety would forfeit their rights." My blood ran cold. So they engineered, or at least allowed, the earthquake to test my loyalty? He lowered his voice. "Possibly. It's unclear, but the codicil implies the estate's well-being must come before any personal ambition. My heart jolted. The weight of this leg, ACY, catlights, legal maneuvers, betrayal, and now this, felt suffocating. I rose. We need to see that codicil. Sir Edmund nodded. It's sealed in the vault. I'll arrange access immediately. As he spoke, Violet approached, worry knit on her brow. Cora, should I be worried about Mr. Whiskers? I knelt to her level. He's safe, Ivy. We'll protect everything we love here. She nodded, but her eyes betrayed uncertainty, echoing my own. Later, in the vault's antechamber, I held the sealed codicil. The heavy iron door shut behind us with a metallic groan. Lucas and Ms. Alvarez watched as I broke the seal. Inside, the parchment crackled in my hands. I scanned the dense script, every word a revelation. If the heir fails to maintain the structural integrity of Ashbourne Hall, whether by negligence or design, then said heir shall forfeit all claims to the trust, to be transferred to the next oldest surviving line. My fingers trembled. This clause was a silent weapon, one my parents could trigger at will. I looked at Lucas. We need to amend this codicil or prove it has expired. He nodded grimly. And we'll need full board approval. I exhaled, tension roiling. This battle wasn't just for inheritance, it was for the survival of the estate and our family's future. As we exited the vault, the morning sun glinted off the courtyard stones, the rose petals stirring in the breeze. The world felt fragile, like the parchment in my hand. And I realized that to protect Ashbourne Hall, I would have to confront secrets buried for generations, and forge an unbreakable path forward. But as I joined the board outside, I caught sight of a hidden figure slipping away, an all-too-familiar silhouette. My breath caught. Someone else was watching. The shadow slipped behind a column as the board adjourned on the vault steps. I narrowed my eyes but lost sight of the figure in the milling crowd of estate staff and distant cousins. The sense of being watched prickled at my skin. Another threat beyond legal codicils and family politics. Sir Edmund approached, clearing his throat. Ms. Ashbourne, the board is prepared to consider amending the seismic clause. We will reconvene this afternoon in the drawing room. Until then, I trust you will gather any additional data. I nodded, turning to Lucas and Ms. Alvarez. We meet at 1. Let's ensure we have every statistic, every historical record, and the testimonies of our engineers. They agreed, fading back into the corridors as I made my way toward the Rose Garden, the place where Lucas and I had first uncovered the inheritance plot. I needed clarity, a moment to gather my thoughts in the midst of mounting crises. The wisteria draped overhead, and the petals swayed in the breeze, a serene curtain that belied the turmoil in my mind. I inhaled the floral scent, closing my eyes. A soft voice interrupted my reverie. Cora! I spun to find Violet, Mr. Whiskers nestled in her arms, his purring a gentle rumble. My God, Ivy, are you okay? I asked. She nodded. I heard you arguing in the vault. I saw someone slip away, and She hesitated, brushing a strand of silver hair behind her ear. I thought I saw Aunt Margaret's silhouette. My pulse quickened. Aunt Margaret? She had always been fond of dramatic flair, but would she be meddling in such secrets? Why would she? I cut off, realizing I needed proof. Thank you, Ivy. Stay safe, and don't let anyone follow you. She dipped her head, concern etched on her face, and hurried back toward the house. I watched her go, mind spinning. I hurried back inside, aware that time was slipping away. Afternoon's light streamed through stained glass as I entered the drawing room. The board was already seated. My parents, Sir Edmund, Kenwood, financial advisors, and several older cousins. Lucas and Ms. Alvarez stood to my left, files and digital tablets at the ready. I stepped forward, commanding the room's attention. Thank you for reconvening, I began. We have clear evidence from the original codicil in 1870, the 1897 amendment regarding seismic bonds, and a comprehensive report from structural engineers recommending reinforcement options already funded by my proposed emergency fund. Ms. Alvarez distributed printed engineer reports. I watched as Sir Edmund scanned them, his eyebrows lifting. The amendment you propose is straightforward, Lucas continued. We seek to update the seismic clause to require that any heir must maintain the hall to modern standards, judged by independent engineers, rather than enforcing onerous residency requirements. This ensures both the estate's safety and the rightful heir's access. Murmurs rippled. Kenwood cleared his throat. This amendment protects the legacy and removes arbitrary hurdles for future heirs. I support it wholeheartedly. A cousin, Lady Forsyth, frowned. But what of tradition? The codicil has served us well for generations. I met her gaze. If tradition endangers the estate, then we must adapt. Our duty is to preserve Ashbourne Hall, not to wrap it in outdated mandates. Silence fell. Then Sir Edmund nodded. All in favor of adopting the proposed amendment? Hands rose, nearly unanimous. Lady Forsyth hesitated, then bowed her head and lifted her hand. My chest swelled with relief. Sir Edmund smiled. The amendment passes. It will be drafted formally for your signature. I exhaled, relief and triumph mingling. The seismic clause was neutralized, and my place as heir was secure. But as the board broke into smaller discussions, my eyes darted to the window. Outside, I glimpsed Aunt Margaret's silhouette slipping behind a hedge. My victory felt tainted. Someone was still working in the shadows. I slipped away, determined to uncover the true puppeteer behind these betrayals. The innocence of family gatherings had long since vanished, replaced by layers of intrigue. In the rose garden's corner, I found a hidden hatch leading underground. I knelt, brushing away leaves to reveal an iron ring bolted into the ground. My breath caught. I pried at the ring, and with a low groan the earth shifted, revealing stone steps descending into darkness. Lounging behind the shadowy entrance was Aunt Margaret, her jeweled comb displaced, her expression both regretful and determined. "Good afternoon, Cora," she said, voice echoing off the stone walls. "I thought you might find my little secret." The hidden stairway was damp and narrow, lit only by the slivers of daylight creeping through the hatch above. I stepped down, my heels clicking against the cold stone. Aunt Margaret descended gracefully behind me, her emerald dress trailing like a shadow. Lucas and Ms. Alvarez hovered at the top, concern etched on their faces. "Aunt Margaret," I said, voice steady but icy, "what is this place?" She paused on the steps, smiling gently. "A secret known only to a few generations of Ashbournes, my grandmother included. This is the old family vault, where sensitive documents and artifacts were hidden from prying eyes. And I've been protecting it for decades." I reached the bottom landing, the musty scent of damp stone filling my senses. At the far end, an alcove housed a small wooden chest, its iron straps rusted with age. "What are you protecting?" I asked, stepping closer. Margaret brushed a strand of hair behind her ear. "Family secrets. Secrets that could destroy our name if revealed." She pointed to the chest. "There's something you need to see, Cora." With a delicate hand, she opened the chest. Inside lay yellowed papers tied with a faded ribbon, alongside an ornate box engraved with the family crest. She lifted the lid of the box first, revealing a small vial of dark red liquid. My breath caught. "What is this?" I whispered. "Blood of my grandmother," Margaret said softly. A tincture she believed held the family's essence, a symbol of unity. Many dismissed it as superstition, but it served as a reminder of our ancestors' bond. I placed my hand on the vial, feeling a chill. "And the papers?" She untied the ribbon and spread the parchments on a stone slab. They were affidavits. One from a servant confirming Lord Ashbourne's hidden debts, another revealing my grandfather's clandestine dealings to save the estate from bankruptcy. The final document, in a shaky hand, was a confession from my grandmother, admitting she had orchestrated a will change to secure the estate, fearing her children were unprepared. My heart thundered. They lied to me, lied to everyone, about how the estate was preserved. Margaret nodded. Every generation faced crises. Some decisions were ugly, but they kept the Ashbournes alive. I stared at the vial and the parchments, understanding the weight of history pressing upon me. "You hid these because the truth could shatter our legacy," she said, stepping closer. I protected it. hoping that one day the right heir, one who understood our family's sacrifices, would emerge. I closed my eyes, wrestling with conflicting emotions. Betrayal by my parents, threats of disinheritance, and now this revelation, the foundation of our family built on secrets. When I opened my eyes, Margaret's face was earnest. "Cora, you've proven your worth. You've fought for Ashbourne Hall and our legacy. Now you must decide. Expose the truth and risk losing everything, or honor the secrets and move forward with new transparency." Silence enveloped the vault, the weight of centuries in my hands. I thought of James, of Violet and Mr. Whiskers, of the estate teetering on fault lines, both literal and figurative. The legacy I had defended was flawed, but it was still mine. I took a deep breath and lifted the vial. These secrets will remain hidden no longer. Our family deserves honesty and redemption. I will share this truth, but only with those who will protect the estate's future with integrity. Margaret smiled, a rare vulnerability in her eyes. "I knew you were the one." I turned and ascended the stairs, parchments and vial in hand, ready to face the board once more, this time armed with the full, unvarnished history of Ashbourne. But as I emerged into the drawing room, I paused at the threshold. My parents sat beside Sir Edmund, his gaze fixed on me with unspoken anticipation. They rose too, and my mother's eyes filled with tears, not of regret, but of awe. "Cora," she whispered, "what have you discovered?" I placed the vial and documents on the table, every pair of eyes widening. "Everything," I said, voice ringing through the chamber, "including the truths we were never meant to know." The weight of silence that fell over the drawing room was more stifling than any earthquake tremor. Each board member's eyes were fixed on the vial, and the parchments sprawled across the table. My mother stood, trembling, but not from fear, more from the enormity of what lay before us. I took my place at the head of the table, meeting my parents' gaze before turning to the rest of the board. "This is the testimony of our ancestors," I began, my voice steady, echoing against the high ceilings. "It tells of sacrifices and deceptions, of my grandmother's desperate measures to save Ashbourne Hall, and the hidden debts my grandfather incurred." My mother swallowed around a lump in her throat. "Your grandmother's actions were meant to protect us all," she said softly, her hands clasped. "She believed the truth would tear us apart." I nodded, allowing compassion into my tone. "Perhaps, but we cannot build the future on lies. Transparency will be our foundation now." Sir Edmund Carriage leaned forward, adjusting his glasses. "Ms. Ashbourne, the board must decide how to proceed. Do we preserve these secrets for the sake of tradition, or do we embrace this truth and redefine our legacy?" A murmur passed among the gathered members. Kenwood Ashbourne spoke first. "History cannot be rewritten, but we can learn from it. I support full disclosure to the family and stakeholders," followed by a public statement that honors our heritage and acknowledges our missteps. Lady Forsyth hesitated, glancing at Ms. Alvarez. The solicitor inclined her head, signaling legal prudence. Ultimately, Lady Forsyth's hand rose. One by one, the members voted in favor of disclosure. 11-0. A collective exhale swept through the room. My parents embraced, tears of relief and pride mingling. I felt a surge of both triumph and sorrow, for the sacrifices hidden, for the burdens lifted, and for the trust rekindled. "We'll need to prepare a family communique," Lucas said, stepping forward, "and a public release after that." I turned to my mother. "Would you like to lead the family statement?" She looked at my father, who nodded supportively. "Yes," she said, "I will." I allowed myself a moment to breathe. The legacy of Ashbourne would no longer be shrouded in silence. Later, in my study, I reviewed the drafted communique with James at my side. His quiet strength steadied me as I typed the final words, ensuring our family's narrative was honest and hopeful. At sunset, we released the statement. Within minutes, messages flooded in. Congratulations, support, and inquiries. The world was watching, and Ashbourne Hall stood ready to face its future. That evening, as the stars emerged over the Surrey countryside, I walked with Violet through the rose garden. Mr. Whiskers padded beside us, his purring a gentle reminder of small loves that endure. I'm proud of you, Violet whispered. You saved our home. I hugged her. We saved it together. In the distance, the outline of Ashbourne Hall was silhouetted against the sky, no longer a fortress of secrets, but a beacon of resilience. Tomorrow, the estate's restoration would begin in earnest. And though the path ahead would be fraught with challenges, legal, structural, and emotional, I knew we had turned a new page. Because sometimes the strongest foundations are forged not by unbroken ground, but by weathering every quake together. The sun had barely kissed the horizon when I descended the grand staircase, determination woven into every fiber of my being. Today marked the official launch of Ashbourne Hall's restoration. Engineers, architects, and conservationists had gathered in the Great Hall, their tools and plans arrayed across long oak tables. The scent of fresh timber mingled with the musty perfume of old stone, a heady reminder of both ruin and renewal. I stepped onto the dais, flanked by James and my parents. My mother's face shone with pride, my father's posture proud and relaxed, a reflection of battles won and wrongs righted. I took a deep breath, ready to address the gathering. Welcome, everyone, I began, voice echoing under vaulted ceilings. Ashbourne Hall stands at the crossroads of history and future. We are here not merely to repair cracks in its walls, but to strengthen the bonds that hold us together, family and community alike. The assembled team nodded, their eyes bright with purpose. Over the coming weeks, I continued, we will restore the crumbling north wing, reinforcing it with state-of-the-art seismic dampers. We will conserve the heritage stonework and update our infrastructure to ensure the estate can weather any storm. An architect from London raised his hand. We have reviewed the original blueprints. With your consent, we'd like to integrate a modern foundation, discreetly placed, to complement the historical aesthetics. I exchanged a glance with the conservation head, then nodded. Proceed, but ensure all additions remain in harmony with the building's character. The murmurs of approval spread through the crowd. Afterward, as I reviewed the updated plans with my parents, a text flashed on my phone. They're on the move. Meet at the stables. Mom and L. Lucas had warned of potential backlash from unseen adversaries. Despite our victory, someone was still scheming. I excused myself and ducked outside, slipping into the morning mist. The stables loomed ahead, dew-slick and silent. Lucas waited by the tack room, his expression grave. What is it? I asked, stepping closer. He unfolded a newspaper clipping. The headline read, Ashbourne Hall's Heir Controversy, Familial Secrets Exposed. Beneath, the article detailed the inheritance battle, the earthquake rumors, and hinted at deeper scandals. I expected praise for our transparency, Lucas said quietly, but someone's planting doubt and stirring gossip. This could deter donors or spark legal challenges from disgruntled relatives. My jaw clenched. Who benefits from this? He shook his head. I'm investigating, but it points to distant cousins, the ones who lost their share in the amendment vote. They may seek to undermine your position. I exhaled, scanning the stable yard. Horses nickered softly in their stalls. The estate's heartbeat thrummed within these walls. We can combat this, I said, steeling my resolve. Release an official statement countering these rumors and highlighting our restoration progress. Then, engage key stakeholders, philanthropists, heritage societies, to pledge support. Lucas nodded. I'll coordinate with your PR team. I placed a hand on a stall door, feeling the warmth of a thoroughbred horse behind it. In its steady breath, I sensed resilience. Let them come, I said, looking into Lucas's eyes. Ashbourne Hall will rise, stronger than ever. He offered a cautious smile. As will you, Cora. I turned toward the manor, determination blazing within me. The next battle might be fought in headlines and whispers, but I was ready. For family, for legacy, for every promise broken, and every vow I had sworn to keep. The evening sky over Ashbourne Hall was painted in deep purples and fiery oranges, as if reflecting the unrest simmering within the estate's grand walls. I sat in the library, surrounded by books chronicling centuries of family history, yet my mind was focused on the modern battles we faced. Between legal disputes, structural restoration, and emerging PR crises, my life felt like a relentless chess match, each move demanding strategy and foresight. A soft knock at the door drew my attention. James stepped into the room, carrying 2 cups of tea. His presence was a welcome anchor. He handed me a steaming cup, the chamomile scent calming my frayed nerves. "You look tired," he said, settling beside me. "Are you sure you don't want to rest?" I managed a small smile. "Not yet, there's too much to do." I glanced at the pile of documents, press releases, donor lists, stakeholder emails. These cousins are relentless. They've reached out to heritage groups, claiming the estate's safety is at risk due to quote, irreparable damage from the tremor. Some donors are hesitant. He nodded, a thoughtful expression crossing his face. "We'll win them back. People support resilience, not perfection." I took a sip. "You're right. We need to highlight the proactive measures we're taking, modern reinforcements, expert teams, and our commitment to preservation." He smiled. "Let me help. I know some contacts at the Heritage Society. I can arrange a private tour with them." Relief washed over me. "That would be incredible. Thank you." As James left, I turned my attention back to the documents. My phone buzzed. A message from Violet. "Can you handle the press conference tomorrow? I'll be there for emotional support and moral backup. Love you." Her cheer bolstered me. I typed back, "Absolutely. See you then." I drafted the talking points for the press conference, emphasizing transparency, the restoration's significance, and the estate's centennial legacy. Hours passed as I honed each phrase. Late into the night, I stepped onto the terrace, tea in hand, watching the moonlight dance across the courtyard. The roses were ghostly silhouettes, their petals glowing under the silver sheen. Lucas joined me, appearing from the shadows. "The Heritage Society tour is confirmed for tomorrow afternoon, and I've arranged for a feature in Country Living magazine to showcase our restoration progress." I exhaled in relief. "That's perfect. They'll be the authority to counter the naysayers." He hesitated, gaze drifting across the cloistered gardens. "One more thing. During my outreach, I discovered that the dissenting cousins have also contacted a billionaire collector, hoping to place Ashbourne artifacts on loan in his private museum. He visits next week." My stomach twisted. If he sees the collection without context, he might support them over us. Lucas nodded. "I suggest we invite him to a private viewing here, highlighting the estate's cultural importance and your vision for its future." I gazed at the moonlit silhouette of the main hall. "Let's do it. No opportunity to showcase Ashbourne's true value can be missed." He offered a supportive nod. "I'll arrange it discreetly." As the night deepened, I leaned back, reflecting on how far I'd come, from the betrayal at my wedding to steering a centuries-old legacy through turmoil. Every challenge had forged me stronger, more resolute. I whispered to the quiet air, "Ashbourne Hall will stand, as long as we believe in its story and are willing to fight for it." The moon rose higher, a silent sentinel over the estate's trials and triumphs. And for the first time in weeks, I felt a spark of calm, knowing that tomorrow's battles would be met with preparation, unity, and unwavering purpose. Dawn's first light found me in the archives room, a small study off the main library where rare books and family records were preserved. Surrounded by centuries-old ledgers and diaries, I felt both the weight of history and the exhilaration of being custody of my family's narrative. Lucas arrived with another sheaf of papers. His expression was brisk, determined. "I've arranged for our artifacts expert, Professor Keating, to catalog key items this morning," he said, spreading provenance reports across the oak table. I nodded. "I want to ensure every piece is documented and tied to the estate's story, so there's no question of their rightful context." As Professor Keating, a kindly man with round spectacles, entered, he offered me a small wooden box. Inside lay a delicate brooch, shaped like a thunderbird, its gemstones dull with age. "This brooch," he began, "was worn by Lady Eleanor Ashbourne during the Great Storm of 1923, when she personally supervised repairs after severe damage. It symbolizes resilience and leadership." I lifted the brooch, admiration flooding me. "We should include its story in our donor materials and the collector's viewing." Lucas glanced at his watch. The collector arrives at 10. We have time. We left the archives and walked through the sunlit corridors to the morning room, where velvet chairs and a mahogany sideboard awaited the guest. I smoothed the front of my dress suit. Today's meeting required poise. At precisely 10, a sleek black car rolled up. Out stepped an impeccably dressed man in his 50s, Jonathan Fairchild, billionaire collector and patron of historical estates. He greeted us with a firm handshake. "Lady Ashbourne," he said, inclining his head, "thank you for the invitation. I'm eager to see these treasures." We led him inside. First, to the archives room, where Keating presented the brooch and its backstory. Fairchild handled it reverently, his eyes alight. "Remarkable," he murmured. "History has a heartbeat here." Next, we showcased the family portrait collection, oil paintings of stern-faced ancestors and grand estate events. James joined us, offering insights on conservation techniques we'd employed. Finally, I guided Fairchild to the main hall, where a temporary exhibit displayed architectural fragments salvaged from the tremor aftermath, stone reliefs, and wrought ironwork. "Your commitment to authenticity and preservation is admirable," Fairchild said, turning to me. "I've had offers from your dissenting cousins, but none with such depth of care for provenance and story." My chest swelled with cautious pride. "We believe Ashbourne Hall's legacy is worth preserving in situ, not in a private gallery." He nodded. "As a token of my support, I would like to purchase a long-term loan of the brooch and fund the restoration of the north wing's great oak beams." Tears pricked my eyes. "Your generosity ensures Ashbourne Hall's future. We are profoundly grateful." Fairchild smiled. "I am proud to be part of your story." Later, as I watched the car disappear down the gravel drive, I felt a surge of hope. With donor support and heritage backing, our path to restoration was clear. But my smile was tempered by a memory: Aunt Margaret's hidden vault, the centuries of secrets, the unseen watchers. In history's shadows lingered threats. As I returned to my parents' suite to share the news, my phone buzzed with a text from Lucas. "One more thing. I've traced the press leaks to an email from the estate's IT system. The culprit is inside." A chill ran through me. The final betrayal lay within these walls. I looked around Ashbourne Hall's grand corridors, sunlight filtering through stained glass, and realized that to secure our future, I must root out the mole among us. And I would, no matter the cost. The hush of dusk settled over Ashbourne Hall as I paced the corridor leading to the estate's control room. My mind raced with the revelation Lucas had uncovered. The press leaks were traced to an internal account. Someone on staff was betraying us. Every face I passed, servants, groundskeepers, even distant cousins, seemed suspect. I reached the control room door, its polished wood reflecting the golden glow of the corridor lamps. Inside, the room hummed with monitors displaying CCTV feeds, network traffic logs, and security alerts. Lucas stood at the main console, brow furrowed. "I've flagged the suspicious IP addresses to this terminal," he said, pointing to a cluster of logs. "It originates from the admin account, assigned to our head of household staff, Mrs. Delacroix." My chest tightened. Mrs. Delacroix had managed the estate for decades. Loyal, stoic, always at my parents' side. To think she might be our mole felt like a knife twist. "Can you confirm it's her credentials?" I asked, stepping closer. Lucas froze the log. "Look here. Login timestamps match her shifts, but the outbound traffic occurred during her breaks." My stomach churned. Could someone have stolen her credentials? He shook his head. "Unlikely. No signs of forced access. The password was entered correctly each time. She's the prime suspect." I nodded and left to find Mrs. Delacroix, determined to confront her with compassion and caution. In the conservatory, where lush palms and orchids thrived under glass ceilings, I found her arranging a fallen fern in its pot. "Mrs. Delacroix," I began softly. She looked up, her expression serene but weary. "Lady Cora," she replied, wiping soil from her gloves. "Is something the matter?" I studied her gentle features. "There's a matter I need to discuss. It's serious. Could we speak in private?" She nodded, setting aside her gloves. We moved to a secluded corner, where a marble bench offered a place to sit. "I've been informed that an internal account, yours, has been linked to press leaks about the estate, I said carefully. I want to understand what happened. Her calm demeanor cracked, her eyes filled with tears. Cora, I would never betray your family. I was only trying to protect you, to warn you of dangers I saw coming. I accessed the network to send anonymous alerts, hoping you'd be more vigilant. My heart pounded. Alerts? But the emails distorted the truth. They suggested scandal, not caution. She shook her head. I didn't realize how it would be received. When I saw the estate in turmoil, I saw you embroiled in conflict. I panicked. I thought if you knew they were whispering against you, you'd be on guard. I exhaled, a mix of relief and betrayal swirling within me. You should have come to me directly. Tears ran down her cheeks. I feared my words would go unheard. You've always relied on Lucas and Ms. Alvarez. I felt invisible. I softened, placing a hand on her shoulder. You're not invisible, Mrs. Delacroix. You've been my rock. But this nearly destroyed our credibility with donors and stakeholders. She bowed her head. I know. I'm sorry. I took a breath. We will handle the fallout, but we need your help to repair trust. Work with Lucas to close the security gaps and assist with drafting a statement acknowledging the leaks and reaffirming our security protocols. She nodded, wiping her tears. I will do anything to make this right. In that moment, I saw not a traitor, but a loyal guardian who had faltered under fear. Compassion welled within me. Thank you, I said quietly. Together, we'll move forward. As we left the conservatory, I felt the weight of the past weeks lifting, yet the path ahead still held challenges. The leaks, the external schemers, and the scars of betrayal would take time to heal. That night, as I stood beneath the canopy of stars in the rose garden, I reflected on the journey. From the betrayal of my parents' absence to the fight for my inheritance, the exposure of ancient secrets, the rebuilding of the estate, and now this fragile restoration of trust within our own staff. Tomorrow, the final chapter would begin. I would celebrate our unity and share the culmination of our story with the world. And as the moonlight bathed the roses in silver, I whispered to myself, this is our moment. Let's make it unforgettable. The morning sun broke over the horizon, casting a warm glow on the freshly restored facade of Ashbourne Hall. Today marked the culmination of months of trials, betrayals, and triumphs. The Rose Garden, once the clandestine stage for midnight rendezvous and hidden conspiracies, now bloomed in full splendor, each petal a testament to endurance. Guests gathered on the lawn, loyal staff, family friends, donors, Heritage Society members, and even the billionaire collector, Jonathan Fairchild. James stood beside me, his hand finding mine, grounding me in this moment. My parents flanked me, Gerald's shoulders squared with pride, Eleanor's eyes shimmering with tears of joy. Violet sat nearby, Mr. Whiskers purring in her lap, both beaming in the sun. From the dais, I surveyed the faces of all who had fought and believed in Ashbourne Hall's legacy. My heart swelled with gratitude and resolve. Welcome, everyone, I began, voice clear and steady. Today, we celebrate not just the restoration of these walls, but the bonds that hold us together, family, trust, and the stories that shape our future. A ripple of applause greeted me as I continued. We faced betrayal, we unearthed secrets, and we weathered literal earthquakes. Yet our commitment never wavered. To my parents, I say thank you for standing by me, for learning that family comes before all else. To Lucas Sinclair and Ms. Alvarez, your guidance was my compass. To Mrs. Delacroix, your loyalty, even when misdirected, showed the depth of your care. To every staff member and partner, your dedication rebuilt this estate. I gestured to the restored wing behind us. Ashbourne Hall stands stronger today because we adapted with honesty, resilience, and unity. Let this place be a beacon for future generations, where openness triumphs over secrecy and love overcomes betrayal. Jonathan Fairchild stepped forward, handing me a small wooden plaque engraved with the estate's crest and the words, "Strength through Unity." It is my honor to present this gift, he said, in recognition of Ashbourne Hall's inspiring rebirth. Tears welled in my eyes as I accepted the plaque. We are honored. Thank you. The choir began to sing, soft voices rising as James slipped a ring onto my finger, a new ring, crafted from the restored ironwork of our gates, a symbol of our unbreakable bond. The afternoon unfolded in laughter, music, and shared stories. Violet's giggles echoed as she chased Mr. Whiskers through the rose bushes. My parents danced together under the lanterns, faces glowing. As the sun began to set, casting the estate in golden hues, I stood alone for a moment by the fountain. The mist danced in the air, and I reflected on the journey from betrayal to belonging. I drew in a deep breath and lifted my phone to record a message for our YouTube channel. Thank you for joining me on this journey. 2 more great stories are next. Don't miss them. Subscribe and turn on notifications. I ended the recording with a smile, letting the fountain's lullaby and the rustle of the roses accompany my vow. Ashbourne Hall's story would continue, rooted in honesty, strengthened by adversity, and guided by the unbreakable bonds of family. And as night fell, the lanterns glowed like stars around the estate, promising that no matter what storms lay ahead, we would face them together, our legacy shining through every trial. 2 more great stories are next. Don't miss them. Subscribe and turn on notifications.